and welcome to this home edition of Politics Today, where we will be looking at some of the major political battles and issues that we will face in 2021. So in this programme today, I'll be joined at home with Robin Benson, who's a Christian political commentator, together with Michael McCann, the director of Israel-Britain Alliance. Firstly, I'll start off with you, Michael. I mean, there can be no doubt that 2020 has been an incredible, dramatic year for all of us. If we have to mention COVID-19, global pandemic, Brexit, the US presidential elections. What are your thoughts on 2020 as a year?
Well, I've just finished compiling my annual report for 2020, and I look back at the 2019 edition, and I started off by saying, you know, what a incredible year in terms of the bruising battle with Brexit, and then we had the decisive general election result in December 2019. Who would have thought? What were the odds in 2020 been even more incredible? And I use it in the very widest sense of the definition. That 2020 would be even more incredible than the previous year. It's been utterly extraordinary. And I think it's testimony to the character of the British people that we've come through it. You know, we've had a lot of people who have died, a lot of people who have had coronavirus, but by and large, you know, the population has stuck together. We've recognised that we have to come together as a nation, and by a nation I mean the United Kingdom. And we'll look forward, despite the recent events in terms of this new mutation of the virus, we look forward to 2021 when more people will be vaccinated and more people will be safe from this terrible, terrible disease.
And Robin, great that you can join us with Michael. What are your thoughts on some of the major political issues that we all faced in 2020?
As Michael has said, none of us sitting here, you know, in our homes this time last year, ever expected that we would go through the next 12 months, you know, and face some of the fear and the confusion, the frustration, the anger, the uncertainties. You know, there's so many. It's been a year of mixed emotions, a truly roller coaster year, as we have sort of lurched seemingly from one crisis to the next. Whether, you know, as we've already highlighted, the Brexit, and then the COVID, and then this COVID seemed to be getting under control, and then it came back again, and then it went away again, and now it's surging back again. And on top of that, we've had the still relatively uncertain result from the US presidential election. I mean, it looks like it's going in a particular way, but, you know, until January the 6th and Congress votes on it once and for all, we're not going to know for 100% sure. And in the meantime, I don't know whether you've read the headlines today, it really definitely looks like Israel's going into a fourth general election in 2 years in March of next year. You know, is this just probably 2 or 3 months after this program airs. So again, you know, even Israel has had a real roller coaster. They've had problems with COVID. So it's just a manic year.
Absolutely. And Michael, I mean, I think the top political issue of 2021 will be COVID-19 and the aftermath of COVID-19, its impact politically, socially, and also economically, as well as the devastations of the lockdowns and the loss of jobs and restaurants and bars being closed, even churches being closed in 2020. What is your assessment of the political realities facing the government in dealing with the COVID-19 crisis for 2021?
Huge question, Simon, a huge question. But can I say that I don't envy any leader having come through this. My only disappointment is that I live in Scotland and I've had to put up with the nationalist leader who's really taken advantage of this pandemic. And we don't, unfortunately, in Scotland have a press that engages and wants to really interrogate what politicians say and do, unlike the rest of the United Kingdom. So I was quite frankly delighted when I saw Conservative MPs challenging the government to provide evidence to support their reasons for shutdown. Up here in Scotland, there is no such interrogation now. They just goes along with what Nicola Sturgeon says, apparently. And we're in a situation where there's no proper interrogation. She doesn't get asked the tough questions. All she wants to do is to press home an advantage at every possible opportunity. So I don't envy any politician, but I look to Boris Johnson, a man who had COVID, let's not forget, who had this disease, and quite frankly, was very close to having to submit to it in the worst possible sense. And he's had to make decisions. And if I think if he's made mistakes, his mistakes have been where he's always trying to have some sort of positivity at the end of his briefings. He's always said, but we'll get this to look forward to. But he's made huge blunders. He's made suggestions that would be back to normal by Christmas, when all the evidence seemed to suggest that this virus thrives in the cold environment. And therefore, it was highly unlikely that that was going to happen. And therefore, rather than tempering his language, he's created an environment where people have, been persuaded that you could open up a little bit, do less, not wear masks, that type of thing. You've seen some terrible scenes on YouTube and social media where particularly young people have just been utterly reckless with their behaviour. So therefore, I don't envy what politicians have had to put up with, but my old party, the Labour Party, I really have got a special word for them, because beneath contempt is what I really feel about them. Because on the one hand, they say they want to support what the government is doing, and next minute all they do is launch into attacks and suggestions that the government have been incompetent. I mean, my goodness, think where we would have been. Just think, for you guys and for the viewers that will be watching this programme, had Jeremy Corbyn become Prime Minister before this pandemic. My goodness, it doesn't beg our thinking about. So, extremely difficult year for politicians. And when you look ahead for the next year, the things we're going to have to deal with. I mean, I don't know what Robin feels about this, or Simon yourself, but I think very few people understand the economics of this. We're having to borrow money as a UK government because we sell bonds. And people buy those bonds because they have confidence in the UK brand. But when it comes to the future, the first thing that has to get paid back is those bonds. So unless we figure out a way how to pay that back over a long term, and I would imagine it would be a long term, then the situation is we'll have less money for the health service, less money for the environment, less money for everything else that we take for granted. And that's the reality of what furlough costs and all the other costs that have been added onto the economy. This idea there's a magic money tree, which some have suggested, and incidentally, some politicians who are meant to be looking after our interests have suggested, is madness. We have to pay this money back, and it's an awful lot of money.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michael. I mean, obviously there's the personal dimension of people who are struggling with loneliness and depression, fear, all of these negative emotions that are actually going to come to a climax for many people at this time of the year as their Christmas family-related plans are thrown into total chaos. But beyond the personal aspect of it, you are right. Where is the money going to come from to pay back all of this borrowing? Because we are, I think, people say we're on the edge of a cliff. Honestly, I think we've fallen off the cliff. We just haven't landed yet, because the damage to the economy is already catastrophic, with the number of firms that have already gone bust, and the others that are teetering on the brink who probably will go bust because Christmas has been closed down. It's one of the busiest times of the year, certainly for the retail sector of our economy, and it's shot to pieces. So bankruptcies, personal bankruptcies, firms going bust. I think it will just accelerate in the new year because of what's happening at the present time as we're recording this program. And therefore, that is then going to have a further ripple effect into the lives of individuals, families, whole communities. It is a desperate situation. And as you say, I wouldn't want to be a politician either, because no matter what they do, it seems like it doesn't turn out right. There's some sort of twist or turn in it that comes back to bite them.
Absolutely. Michael, I have to ask you that how do you think Boris Johnson will fare in 2021, knowing now that he's going to be branded as the Prime Minister who cancelled Christmas for millions of people? And of course, he closed churches as well with the pandemic as well, which is unprecedented.
Well, I was reading some stuff today, and it's suggesting that the people who are spreading this mutation are young children. And he's got tough choices now to make in terms of education, about whether he keeps schools open or whether he shuts them down, because that's been something that the government have been very, very keen to do. You know something? I think I've always tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. If I was to give him any advice, if he would take any from me, I would say, look, you've got to just calm down some of your natural instinct to point towards a brighter future in the short term when he possibly knows that there's going to be further problems down the route. But the one saving grace that he's got, yeah, he cancelled Christmas, but we're not the only country that cancelled Christmas. Across Europe, Christmas has effectively been cancelled. I was meant to be in France in Boxing Day to celebrate my young nephew's wedding, and that had to be cancelled. All the flights were cancelled. So, it's everywhere this has had an effect. The saving grace that Boris has is that we're only in the first year, or completed the first year of his potential five-year parliamentary term. And I think the real scrutiny on the other parties has just not been there, because the government has to be the one that makes the decisions, the tough decisions about dealing with the pandemic. And ultimately, there will be a post-mortem. There will be an ability to analyse where we've been going wrong. I heard the professor today on the television saying that, lockdown was a mistake, still saying it was a mistake, despite the fact that the Swedish evidence would seem to suggest otherwise. But nonetheless, all of that analysis has to take place. And I just hope that people remember, when analysis does take place, is they're doing so with hindsight and having learned all the information that was not available when the decisions had to be taken, which is most crucial.
Mm-hmm. And Robin, if we consider looking back at 2020, I mean, we've seen the government preside over unprecedented powers. We've seen our own personal freedoms and liberties curtailed to the extent that we've never seen them curtailed like this before. We've even had churches closed. We've had the police arresting pastors for having their churches open, including Reagan King and his church in Islington that made the news back in November. So do you think in 2021 we will get those cherished freedoms back, or will it all have to wait and hang on the result of the vaccine?
I mean, what do you want me to say, Simon?
Your perspective. Don't give us a very story.
No. The heart intention is obviously you would hope that that's the case, all right? That's human nature. You want things better. You want things, in some sense, hopefully to go back to some semblance of what it was before. But on the basis of what we're looking at right now, the hard, harsh reality of this scary upsurge in infections that seems to have got most of the scientists, apart from the one that Michael mentioned, and a lot of the government officials and even those in opposition, all of a jitter because they see potentially something going out of control. I can't see anytime soon that things are going to go back to anywhere near what we call normal. And as you and I were discussing before we started, although it's speculation, and I think we need to emphasize that, there is speculation now that the vaccine will not work against this mutation. But again, there's so many unknowns with this virus, and there's still unknowns about the original virus, and there's lots of testing that needs to be done. But if that proves to be the case, then as you rightly pointed out, literally billions that's been invested trying to produce these various vaccines is just, you might as well flush it down the toilet, because it's not going to be of any real long-lasting value. So, yeah, what's normal anymore? What is normal? Yeah, Michael, you go out for a walk, I go out for a walk. People are walking around with masks on, even out on the open countryside. Some folk, as they approach you, will veer off to one side as if that's going to make a ha'porth worth of difference, in respiratory, catching something, respiratory wise. We've created a situation where a lot of people live in constant fear. And it's going to take a lot. It's going to take an awful lot to undo that, to get that out of the way.
Right, there's a doomsday scenario which Robin's just alluded to, which is this virus has mutated to a point where the vaccine won't work. I've got to be honest, I haven't read that analysis. My analysis that I've read is that virtually every expert says that the way that this vaccine has been created, it will deal with it's not about.
Great.
the mutation is about swifter transmission. It's not about a change in the virus itself. So here's my position. I'm not trying to actually contradict what I said earlier about Boris Johnson, but 500,000 people have already received their vaccinations, okay? And some people are decrying that. Bottom line is that's 14% of over 80-year-olds. It's a significant chunk of care workers. So, by the way, fantastic. Once this thing starts to really drive, and I was speaking to a friend of mine who's a senior nurse and talking about how they're going to do it in our local town. They're talking about a massive refrigerated unit in a large sports centre where you'll have an appointment time, you'll come along, you'll get the jab and you're released and you go out, and then you get your second jab. But so here's my view. Either doomsday, which is this has spiraled out of control and it's something different to what we thought it was, or here's a more positive outlook, that if we step up both the production of the vaccine and we get sufficient quantities of it to inoculate 20 million people, which would give us an ability to go back to normal, according to the experts, because all the vulnerable groups would be covered, then you can be looking to see light at the end of the tunnel by April, by Easter. And I would rather, I know this is a fast-changing picture, but I would rather be in that situation, because I'll tell you something, if it's a doomsday one, then quite frankly, we might as well all shut up shop, because I've got to be honest with you, I'm reaching the end of my tether in terms of this lockdown business and being stuck in within these four walls, and the occasionally getting out to be able to go to a gym or whatever. As you can see, I've been working out. Only joking, but the position is that, you know, getting the mental health aspect and how it's affecting people's health is utterly crucial, as Robin has highlighted. But I would prefer to look at a realistic but optimistic short term where we'll be able to get this under control, get the vaccine rolled out, protect more people, and then gradually move life back to normal, to the point where when we do this show next year, all together, face to face in the studio, we can say, wow, that was some roller coaster ride, but we're at the end of it and we can now move forward.
Can I ask a question of Michael? Because this is something that I come across in the circles that I am in contact with. How do we get those who have got reservations about taking the vaccine to seriously consider taking it? Because there's a reasonably high percentage of the population spread across the whole nation who, for all sorts of different reasons, now I know some of it's, you know, conspiracy theory claptrap, but other folk have got genuine worries about taking. How do we get them beyond this hurdle that they have put up against taking the vaccine? Because they are an important part of the population. They're right across the age band.
Well, the only way we're going to get back to normal is if the vaccine works and people take it. And for those that are thinking, well, I'll not take it, but everybody else can take it, it just seems to me to be rather ironic and a rather twisted way to look at life. The situation is, I know members of my family who refused. Do you remember when the whole MMR stuff came out, and this fake doctor or doctor claimed that, you know, it was dangerous, it caused autism and all the rest of it? It was found out to be completely and utterly fake. The reason this vaccine has been produced so quickly is because billions upon billions upon billions have been invested in it across every civilized country in the world, every first world country in the world. And that is why we have it so quickly. And therefore, for people who want to rely on others to get vaccinated in order for life to get back to normal, then I'm sorry, that's not how it's going to work. And we have to show confidence, and even pictures like Joe Biden and others getting the vaccination and other senior figures, I think that will help. Because my mother said, when the Queen gets it, I'll get it.
I just want to issue a word of caution on the kind of vaccine. It usually takes 5 or 10 years for a company to fully invest and look at the impacts of a vaccine. And I think one of the dangers we have to be a little bit cautious with this vaccine is, yes, we all hope there were 3 main vaccines, and I think the Oxford one sounds like the best one. But in terms of the vaccine itself, we don't know what the side effects will be. And the government haven't announced what the side effects, and it will affect some people. We can't deny the fact that we don't fully know the side effects of having this vaccine, but we can see that there will most probably be a vaccine passport in the future, that if you want to go to a football stadium, you have to have this vaccine passport, or a church, or to go to a theatre, or to go to a restaurant, to travel on a plane. And we can see that this is the kind of new vaccine passport that we'll have to take. And there are huge amounts of people that are very, very concerned with
the only question,
vaccine.
but Simon, the only question that must be asked if you take that view is, what's your alternative? And the alternative is we stay like this forever. And quite frankly, as Robin highlighted earlier, the effects in mental health and all the rest of it. I was speaking to my GP about something, nothing major, just a call about a little issue, and he said to me, he's dealing with one young person a day. This is one single GP who wants to commit suicide. Yet we cannot treat these things.
Yeah.
And we've got to understand that if you think a potential vaccine has got side effects, and if you read any medicine you've got around the house, you'll open up the little pamphlet that goes along with it, and quite frankly, it's like some of those American adverts. This medicine could cause death. I mean, quite frankly, there comes a point where you have to make a judgment in your own life. And I think I might be wrong in this. I think I'm right in saying for a vaccine to become effective, it has to be amongst 70% of the population. And I would hope that a combination of people who are willing to take it, like me, I would take it right now, right live on Revelation TV, people who, like me, who would take it, and others who get confidence by seeing others taking it. That's the way to go forward. That's all we can do, because the alternative, I'm afraid, is even worse.
Absolutely. So we've got 6 minutes left of the programme, so I want to bring in two major political issues, I think, well, three actually, that will affect us in 2021. And very briefly, we have a new leader of the Labour Party in Keir Starmer, Robin, and we still see that the party is plagued with anti-Semitism, particularly the report that was produced by the Commission for Equality and Human Rights that condemned the party for anti-Semitism. Do you think in 2021 Keir Starmer can really get a grips with this issue and reassure the Jewish community, as well as the Commission on Equality and Human Rights, that he has dealt with this issue?
Well, on the basis of how he's handled it so far, yes, I think it's possible that he will be able to allay the fears of the Jewish community, or at least a reasonable percentage of them. I think, having said that in all honesty, that issue is going to take a back seat outside of the Jewish community, and maybe outside of the Christian community that supports Israel and the Jewish people, behind Brexit and COVID-19. They're going to predominate, and that issue is going to be there in the background. It's not going to go away, but he's done a good job so far, as far as I can see.
And Michael, what are your thoughts as a former Labour MP? What are your thoughts on Keir Starmer, and particularly this big problem he has of dealing with Jeremy Corbyn and the extreme leftists within his party?
Right. Well, I'll be brief because you've got other things you want to get in. Number one, Jeremy Corbyn cannot be readmitted back into the Parliamentary Labour Party. He should be banned and kicked out of the party, full stop. A big test for Keir Starmer. It's great to see that Gillian Merrin, the Chief Executive of the Board of Deputies, has been elevated to the House of Lords. I think that's another signal to people outside that the government are treating this issue very, very seriously and want someone of Gillian's quality inside that establishment. And in the wider sense, politically, the jury is still out for me, because the pandemic has shown the Labour Party is just speaking complete doublespeak. It says we support the government 100%, then criticises it in the next breath. And I think that's very unfair, when at this time you should be looking for a unity of purpose to get over this big hurdle. Jury's still out for me with Keir Starmer. He's done a lot, but he has to maintain that position, and he has to deal with these exponents of anti-Semitism who are still there behind Jeremy Corbyn and still believe what he says.
And Robin, I just want to, we know that in 2021, Brexit will dominate our news headlines. And as the recording of this programme, it looks like we're heading for a no Brexit. What are your thoughts on Brexit in 2021, where we could be leaving the EU with a no deal, and what that will mean for our relations with the European Union?
I think the European Union relations between the UK and the folk across the Channel are going to be very strained in 2021 and from then onwards. I think that's the reality. Again, the EU has got to deal with COVID-19 as well across the other, 26, 27 member states. But we can see, as we're sitting here discussing this, how strained the situation already is, and it's not going to get any easier.
And Michael, I think we have to talk about the impact of the US presidential elections, both in domestic and foreign policy. And as of this recording, it looks very, very likely that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be the president and the vice president. And it's only a question of time how long Joe Biden is actually in office, with the extreme Kamala Harris waiting in the wings. What impact do you think this will have politically on Britain in terms of Brexit, but also more importantly, in terms of Israel being a pro-Palestinian administration?
Well, first of all, in terms of the domestic relationship, there's always, despite all the things that are said over the years of the different presidents and prime ministers, the UK and the US have got a pretty solid relationship. And quite frankly, I don't think that that's going to suffer too much. Biden's an old fox. He's been in the Senate for decades. He knows his stuff. He knows how to be a politician. He has to say certain things at certain times. But I think there'll be a strong relationship there again. It's more worrying for me, for my day and daily, my bread and butter work in terms of defending Israel and building the Israel-Britain relationship. The bottom line is that Biden's a big supporter of Israel. I've heard him speak at AIPAC. I've heard him speak many, many times. But he's got a blind spot when it comes to the Palestinian Authority. And they will reinstate, in my opinion, all the money that I mean, I think Trump made a mistake by taking the money away but not rediverting it somewhere else, because he was left open to the accusation that he was not showing any compassion at all for ordinary Palestinians. And incidentally, while I ultimately always condemn the Palestinian leadership, I don't condemn the ordinary people, because they've got no control over it, because quite frankly, if they say anything, they're going to be subjected to violence as well. So therefore, I seriously worry that Kamala Harris is in the awkward squad brigade, you know, in terms of some of the Congress women that are completely anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. How are they going to balance the competing views inside? There's some strong Democrat congressmen and congresswomen, but there are equally extremists. And how are they going to deal with them? And as you say, Biden's no spring chicken. If Kamala Harris at any point became the president of the United States of America, I would shudder to think what the Middle East would look like.
And very quickly, we're down to the last 30 seconds. Can you tell us, Michael, about your latest campaign that our viewers can get involved in defending Israel through Israel-Britain Alliance?
Thanks for the opportunity, Simon. Very briefly, people remember that after the State of Israel was created, 856,000 Jewish people were expelled from Arab lands. Nobody talks about them. Everybody talks about the Palestinian refugees. So we're having a petition. You can go to our website, www.israelbritain.org.uk, and go to live campaigns, click on it, fill in your name and details. And what we want to do is for the British government to declare the 30th of November as a national day of awareness of the plight of the forgotten refugees, so that we can take away that word forgotten. And we remember that there was many, many more people who were displaced as a result of that conflict, a conflict that was not created by the State of Israel after the State of Israel was created. And this is the first stepping stone to that campaign to get 30 November each year designated the day for the forgotten refugees.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys, for doing such a great job. And I want to wish you and your families a happy new year and hopefully a better 2021.
And to you, Simon.
And I just want to thank you for watching today's program as we looked at some of the big challenges that we all face in 2021. And there's no doubt that we can't get through this year without prayer. So we need the Lord's help in 2021 to continue to fight for righteousness and for his kingdom. So thank you for joining us on Politics Today.